Hello everyone, Morgan Hibbs here with Lynn County Farm Bureau. I'm excited to be visiting your classroom virtually for another Ag in the Classroom lesson. Today we have a fun activity called Mighty Soybeans. Before we begin, please pause this video and go watch our read aloud story, My Family's Soybean Farm. In the story, we learn about a young boy who lives here in Iowa and how his family grows soybeans on his farm. Throughout the story, please pay close attention to the life cycle of a soybean. At the end of this activity, we have a soybean review life cycle activity looking at the different stages in the life cycle of a soybean plant. Now, this soybean is a tiny little seed. What would we be growing this tiny little seed for? Why do we grow so many soybeans here in Iowa? Well, soybeans are used to feed animals like pigs and chickens. Soybeans are also used to make biodiesel, a fuel that that can power trucks and school buses. Soybeans are also used to make soybean oil, tofu, soy milk. Soybeans are even in the seat of your car. We can use soybeans to make crayons and candles, and if you've ever tried a fresh soybean, it's called edamame. We grow soybeans here in Iowa primarily to maturity or to the end of the life cycle when the seeds have dried out. A fresh soybean, edamame, are harvested when the plant is still green. Today we are going to germinate soybeans, but we are going to do a fun experiment. In the story, we learned about the life cycle of a soybean plant. The first stage in the life cycle is to germinate. Germination is a big word that means seed growth. The seed is starting to grow and that plant is first emerging from the seed. On the outside of the seed, we have a seed coat. Once water is soaked up by the seed, once the seed absorbs the water, it begins to germinate. We also need to provide that seed with heat. When we plant seeds out in the field, the sun provides heat for the seed by warming up the soil. When the seed is in the soil, the sun warms up that seed and it starts to germinate once that water has been absorbed by the seed. So we need two things for seed germination. We need heat and we need water. Once the seed has germinated and it has roots and a stem, that's when we need the nutrients in the water from the soil and we need the direct sunlight to help the seed photosynthesize. But when you're germinating seeds, think about how mighty those seeds have to be to germinate up through the soil. When we plant a seed into the soil, it's covered by a layer of soil on top. That seed has to grow up through that soil. Also, sometimes seeds are planted in areas that have more rocks. If you think about a tree, we have trees on the farm that are growing up around fences. Sometimes seeds have to grow in environments that are not very suitable for growing seeds in. But seeds somehow still manage to grow in all of these places around the world. Here in Iowa, we have really rich black soil, and we also have pretty level and smooth fields, but in some parts of the United States, the fields can be very rocky. We can have lots of rocks and hard soil. Some places are more sandy. So seeds need to be able to germinate in all sorts of different environments. That seed has to be really mighty. And it's pretty powerful how strong a seed really is. So today we are going to prove how strong a seed is by planting a seed in Plaster of Paris. Now, what is plaster? Plaster is a type of mixture similar to a sidewalk or cement. If you've ever maybe broken an arm or a leg, sometimes casts can be made out of plaster. In art class, we use plaster of Paris to make different molds or sculptures. It starts off as a powder, just like sidewalk cement. And when we add water to it, it hardens into a solid. It doesn't harden right away. It becomes a liquid, and then after a couple of hours, it will harden. Now, we said that seeds need two things. We need water and heat. Where will my seed, if we plant a seed in this, where will it get the water from? Well, we are going to add water to our soybean plaster of Paris. We're going to mix the water in, and so the soybean will get the water from the water that we add. It soaks up that water pretty quickly, that it has time to soak up that water before the plaster hardens. Now, where will the seed get the heat that it needs? Well, we have a reaction happening that's creating energy inside of my cup here when we add water to it. But also, I'm going to place it by the window so that we can use the sun as our heat source. After a couple hours, you'll notice something happening with our experiment. And then, in a couple of days, you'll notice something even more happening to our experiment. But what do you predict will happen? Do you think our seed will be able to germinate in this plaster of Paris? Talk about it with your class and brainstorm. What do you think will predict? Take an educated guess of how you think that seed will grow inside our plaster of Paris. Do you think it will continue to grow once it's germinated? How will the seed break through the surface of that plaster? I'm going to turn the camera around and show you how we are going to make our experiment today. So let's get started. We begin our experiment by adding water to our plaster of Paris. You just want to add a little bit to begin. You can always add more if you need to. You might see some puffs of powder from the plaster. You want it to be kind of the consistency of a vanilla milkshake. So I just am going to add just a little bit more, but you don't want it to be soupy. You want it to be still pretty thick. You want to mix it all up. Then you're going to add 3 soybeans to the mixture. Use your popsicle stick to push them down so that they are covered. Then we want to keep the lid off, but to take it home, you can put the lid back on. When you get home, you can take the lid off, or you can leave it at school and check on it throughout the day and maybe tomorrow before you take it home. If you are already at home, you can leave the lid off. After a couple hours, come back and check to see what has happened to our soybeans and was your prediction right? And then check the soybeans again tomorrow to see if there were any additional changes. I hope you had fun with our activity, Mighty Soybeans. If you take pictures, I would love to see them. I would love to see how your soybeans germinated in the plaster of Paris, if they were able to break through that hard surface of that plaster. And I would love to know how you use this activity in your classroom or at your home. So thank you everyone for watching, and I look forward to visiting you virtually next month.